I still remember the night my son was born, as vividly as if it were yesterday. The hospital room smelled faintly of antiseptic, mingled with the sweet scent of newborn innocence. I held him in my trembling arms, marveling at the tiny fingers, the fragile form, and the miraculous life I had brought into the world. "I promise," I whispered, tears streaming down my cheeks. "I will protect you, love you, and give you everything I can, no matter what life throws at us." His father had left us when he was just 3 years old, abandoning us to face the hardships of life alone. Those early years were a blur of sleepless nights, empty cupboards, and whispered fears that we might never survive. I learned to cook meals with almost nothing, mend torn clothes with threadbare patience, and create laughter even when my own heart ached. Every day was a battle, but every smile from my son was a victory, a reminder that I was doing something right. When he learned to walk, I chased him across the tiny courtyard of our small house, my arms aching from lifting him over puddles, my legs sore from running after him. Yet I laughed along with him, knowing these moments were priceless. When he learned to speak, his first words came hesitantly, but my heart soared with pride. "Mama," he whispered, and I knew that despite everything, I had given him enough love to thrive. School was a struggle, fees were high, supplies were expensive, and every month I worried whether we would have enough. I often took odd jobs, walking miles under the scorching sun, just to save a few extra rupees for books or uniforms. I sold my jewelry, the last pieces left from my dowry, to pay for tuition. Sometimes, I went hungry so he could eat. I remember nights lying awake, listening to his soft breathing, wondering if the sacrifices were enough, if I was enough. Through all this, I never complained. Not once, even when neighbors whispered about my struggles, even when relatives questioned my decisions, even when my body ached and my spirit cried out for rest. I kept going because every step I took, every hardship I endured was for him, my son, my life, my everything. As he grew older, I watched him excel. He was smart, charming, and confident, admired by teachers and friends alike. People often said, "Your son will take care of you when you are old." I believed them, I believed him. I had raised him with love, guidance, and endless sacrifice, and I was certain that one day he would return the care tenfold. But life has a way of testing even the strongest bonds. When he announced he was getting married, I was overjoyed. I imagined the day in vivid detail, the bride walking down the aisle, the laughter of relatives, the pride shining in his eyes as he began a new chapter of life. I threw myself into preparations, working tirelessly to ensure everything was perfect. Every decoration, every small gesture, every prayer was for him, even though we had modest means. I wanted him to feel like a king on his wedding day, and I wanted to be there, standing proud as his mother. The morning of the wedding, I woke before sunrise. I bathed, dressed in a simple but clean sari, and looked at myself in the mirror. My face was weary, lined with years of struggle, yet my eyes shone with anticipation and love. "Today," I whispered, "you take your first steps into a new life. May it be full of happiness." I packed the small gifts I had managed to gather, tucked a few extra rupees into an envelope for emergencies, and stepped out into the crisp morning air. The wedding hall was breathtaking. Lights glittered like stars, flowers decorated every corner, and laughter echoed through the grand space. I walked slowly, taking in every detail, every smile, every decoration. My heart swelled with pride as I scanned the room for my son. When I finally saw him, standing tall near the stage, my chest tightened with emotion. He looked handsome, confident, and full of life. I took a deep breath, smiled, and stepped toward him, ready to embrace him and bless his new journey. But as I approached, I noticed something unusual. Conversations around me paused. Eyes turned toward me, some curious, some judgmental. Whispers traveled like cold wind through the hall. My son's bride stood nearby, watching silently, and I felt a strange tension in the air. He turned to me, his expression hard, eyes cold. "What are you doing here?" he asked sharply. I laughed nervously, assuming he was joking. "What do you mean, I'm your mother?" I said, my voice trembling slightly. His jaw tightened. "You shouldn't have come." Confusion and hurt struck me simultaneously. Beta, this is your wedding. Why? I started, but words failed me. The whispers grew louder. Guests stared. Some looked away, pretending not to notice. Some watched with morbid curiosity. The realization hit me like a blow. I was about to be humiliated in front of everyone I knew, by the very child I had sacrificed everything for. You're embarrassing me, he said quietly, but with a force that silenced me. Leave now. I felt my world collapse. Embarrassing you. I raised you, I loved you, I sacrificed everything for you. I cried out, my voice breaking. He didn't respond. Instead, he called quietly, yet coldly, security, take her outside. Hands grabbed my arms. Guests watched, some in shock, some in silent judgment. I was pulled away from the stage, away from my son, away from the joy I had envisioned. My tears flowed freely as I was escorted out, the music and laughter inside continuing as if I had never existed. Outside, on the cold steps of the hall, I sat broken, my heart ached. My spirit felt crushed, yet somewhere deep inside, a small flicker of strength remained. I had survived every hardship before. Surely I could endure this as well. That night, back in my small home, I sat alone. The walls echoed with memories, his first steps, his laughter, his dreams. Every corner reminded me of the love, patience, and sacrifice that had defined my life. And yet, the betrayal, sharp and cruel, cut deeper than anything I had ever experienced. I did not know then that the wedding day humiliation was only the beginning. The next morning would bring a test even harsher, a test of dignity, courage, and the very foundation of the bond between mother and son. The next morning dawned with a heavy, oppressive silence that seemed to press down on me from every direction. The previous day's humiliation still clung to me, an invisible weight that made each movement feel sluggish and awkward. My body ached from tension, my eyes were red and swollen from endless tears, and my mind kept replaying the cold expressions on my son's face at the wedding. I tried to distract myself, making tea, tidying the small house, and moving slowly through the familiar spaces that had once been filled with laughter. Every corner reminded me of memories, and every memory now felt like a dagger twisting deeper into my heart. I tried to focus on the tasks at hand, but my thoughts kept returning to one inescapable reality. The child I had loved and nurtured for years had humiliated me in front of our entire family, friends, and community. Then the phone rang. A shiver ran down my spine as I recognized the number. My hands trembled as I picked it up. "Hello," I whispered. There was no greeting, no attempt to soften the tension, just a cold, direct voice. "Mother, I need the house papers. Bring them today." My heart nearly stopped. For a moment, I could not breathe. What are you talking about?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "The house," he said impatiently. "The documents are in your cupboard. I need them immediately." A storm of emotions hit me at once. Shock, disbelief, pain, and a searing anger I had never felt toward him before. You threw me out of your wedding yesterday," I whispered, my voice quivering. "And this is the first thing you ask." There was a pause, and then his voice, cold and detached, replied, "Don't make this about emotion. This is practical. Sign the papers. It's for your own good too. You're old, alone, and this will simplify everything." I felt as if the floor had dropped beneath me. My son, my own flesh and blood, was speaking to me with such harshness, so detached from the love and respect that should exist between mother and child. My throat tightened, and for the first time, I questioned everything. Every sleepless night, every sacrifice, every moment of silent endurance I had given for him. "Alone," I whispered. "Do you think I am alone? You are my son, you are my life, and you speak to me as if I am a stranger." "Enough," he snapped. "Don't act emotional. I'm coming over. Bring the papers, or I will take legal action." The call ended before I could reply. My hands shook, my heart raced, and I felt a despair so deep it seemed to seep into my very bones. He was not only demanding my property, but he was also trying to erase me from the home I had built with years of struggle and love. Hours later, the doorbell rang. My son had arrived. His wife stood beside him, arms crossed, scanning the house with a critical eye. There was no warmth, no respect, only entitlement and calculation. "Sit," he said sharply, placing a folder containing the house documents on the table. "Sign them, it's a simple process." I stared at the papers, my hands trembling, my mind screaming in disbelief. Every certificate, every photograph, every corner of this house carried years of memories, his first steps, his school projects, birthday parties, moments of laughter and tears. And now he expected me to hand it over as if it were a trivial transaction. "Did you ever think about what you are doing?" I asked softly, fighting to keep my voice steady. "Do you understand the weight of betrayal, the pain you're causing?" He avoided my gaze, his lips pressed tightly together. "This isn't about betrayal. This is about practicality. Sign the papers, Mother. It's for the best." "Practicality," I echoed, anger rising through my veins. "You humiliated me at your wedding, threw me out like a stranger, and now you call this practicality. You speak of ownership, of entitlement, yet you forget the sacrifices, the nights of hunger, the dreams I set aside for you. You forget love." His face darkened. "Mother, enough. I am the head of this family now. This house belongs to me, and you need to accept that. You are my son," I said, my voice rising, trembling with fury and sorrow. "But a son does not humiliate his mother. A son does not demand what he has not earned. A son protects and respects the woman who gave him life." There was silence, heavy and suffocating. His wife shifted uncomfortably, realizing that this was not a simple legal matter, but a clash of dignity, respect, and the painful truth of betrayal. I looked at him, tears streaming down my face, and said, "I will not sign these papers. Not today, not ever. You may try to take my home, but you will never take my dignity, my memories, or the love I have for you. You may demand, but I will not surrender." He stared at me in disbelief, rage and frustration flickering across his face. "You are making this impossible." He spat. "Do you know what you are risking?" "Yes," I said firmly. "I know exactly what I am risking, but I will not compromise who I am, even for the child I love most." With that, he grabbed the folder, his hands shaking with anger, and stormed out. His wife followed silently, eyes downcast. The door slammed shut, leaving me in a house that was mine, yet felt heavier with sorrow and betrayal than ever before. I sank into a chair, exhausted, trembling and crying, but somewhere deep inside, a spark of strength ignited. I had been betrayed by the one I loved most, humiliated and tested beyond belief, but I was still standing. I was still whole. That night, as I sat alone, the moon casting silver shadows across the walls, I reflected on the life I had lived. Years of sacrifice, love, and resilience had brought me to this moment. And though the pain was unbearable, I realized something crucial. True strength is not in submission or fear, it is in standing firm, even when those you love try to destroy you. This was only the beginning. The months ahead would test me even further, forcing me to confront not only my son, but the world around me, the neighbors, relatives, and society that had their own opinions and judgments. And I knew that, if I wanted to survive, to protect what was mine, I would have to dig deeper than ever before, finding reserves of courage and resilience I hadn't even known existed. The days after the confrontation were suffocating. My son had retreated, but not silently. News of his actions began spreading through our neighborhood and family circles like wildfire. Relatives whispered behind my back. Neighbors asked awkward questions when they saw me, and the once warm, familiar streets of my childhood now felt hostile. Every glance, every murmur reminded me of the betrayal I had endured. Even within my own home, the silence was deafening. Every room echoed with memories, his laughter, his cries, his first steps, and now, those memories felt like both a blessing and a burden. I spent hours in quiet reflection, thinking about how quickly the child I had nurtured had turned into a man capable of such coldness. Then came the messages, subtle at first, but growing increasingly insistent. My son would send notes, some polite, some harsh, trying to provoke a reaction. "Sign the papers, it's for your own good. You're being unreasonable. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." Each message cut deeper than the last. the words carefully chosen to manipulate my conscience. I tried to ignore them, focusing instead on the daily routines that had sustained me for decades. Cooking, cleaning, tending to small chores, each action a small reclaiming of my dignity. Yet the emotional weight never lifted. I knew that he was testing me, pushing to see if I would yield. But I also knew that yielding meant surrendering not just property, but my very sense of self. One afternoon, there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find my eldest cousin, a woman I had once considered a friend, standing with a forced smile. "Your son is very worried," she said. "He says you're being unreasonable. He's asking if you will reconsider, for the sake of family harmony." Family harmony, the words made me laugh bitterly. "Harmony?" I asked. "Do you call humiliating your mother at her own son's wedding, then demanding her home harmony?" She hesitated but pressed on. "He loves you, you know. Maybe he just doesn't understand how much this affects you. Perhaps you could sign the papers, just to calm things down." I felt my blood boil. Love doesn't humiliate. Love doesn't demand without regard. Love doesn't erase a lifetime of sacrifice and expect compliance in return. She gave me a pitying look and left, muttering something about stubbornness. As the door clicked shut, I sank onto the chair, feeling the tension of the past weeks pressing down on me. I realized then that the battle was not just with my son. It was with the world, with everyone who assumed that I should bend, that I should sacrifice again, that I should give up my dignity to maintain appearances. That night, I sat by the window, staring at the moonlit sky. Memories flooded back, his first day of school, the nights I stayed awake when he was sick, the meals I skipped so he could eat. Each memory was a reminder of what I had given freely, what I had endured without complaint. And now he expected me to give more, not out of love, but out of fear and obligation. The next day, he appeared at my doorstep in person. His face was a mixture of anger, impatience, and a hint of guilt that he tried to mask. "Mother," he said sharply, "I don't understand why you are making this so difficult. Sign the papers, it's simple. Don't make this complicated." I looked at him, seeing not the boy I had raised, but a man consumed by entitlement and arrogance. "You speak of simplicity," I said, my voice trembling with a mixture of anger and sorrow. "But you forget what this house represents. Every corner, every room, every memory. This is not just property. This is my life, and you have no right to demand it." He took a step closer, his voice rising. "Mother, you don't understand. This is for everyone's good. You are alone. And this is the practical choice. You should be grateful that I even care enough to consider you." I laughed bitterly, the sound hollow in the empty room. "Grateful? You humiliated me, rejected me, and now you speak of care. You think love and sacrifice can be measured with legality and threats." His eyes narrowed. "Do not lecture me. I am your son, and you will obey. Sign the papers or I will proceed without you. You have no choice." For the first time, I realized the extent of the manipulation. It was not merely legal or financial. It was psychological. He wanted to break me, to make me feel powerless, to erode my spirit so that I would comply without resistance. But years of struggle, of sacrifice, had forged a resilience in me that no amount of threats could shatter. "No," I said firmly, my voice steady. "I will not sign. You may try every method you can imagine, but I will not surrender my dignity, my memories, or the life I have built." He glared at me, anger and disbelief contorting his face. "You are making this impossible," he hissed. "Everything I do is for you, and you are treating me like an enemy. You are treating me like a stranger." I replied, "An enemy would not be someone I carried in my arms, someone I nurtured, someone I sacrificed for all my life. An enemy does not demand what is not theirs by right, nor does an enemy humiliate and then threats. You may think you have power, but you are mistaken. Love, respect, and dignity cannot be commanded. They must be earned." He stood there, furious and frustrated, his wife silent behind him, realizing that this confrontation was far deeper than they had anticipated. The folder containing the house papers trembled in his hands, but he made no move to sign, no move to escalate, perhaps realizing, for the first time, that my resolve could not be bent. Finally, he stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Silence returned, heavy and oppressive. I sat alone, exhausted, shaking, and crying, but beneath the pain, there was also a flicker of triumph. I had faced the ultimate betrayal, stood firm in the face of manipulation, and refused to surrender my essence to the demands of my own child. That night I lay awake, contemplating the road ahead. I knew that the coming months would be full of challenges, emotional, legal, and social. My son would continue to push, relatives would continue to judge, and society would continue to whisper. But I also knew one undeniable truth. I had survived worse, and I could endure this. My dignity, my memories, my life, these were mine to protect no matter what. And in that realization, I discovered a strength I had long forgotten. The strength of a mother who has loved without condition, endured without complaint, and faced betrayal without surrendering. That strength would guide me through every trial that lay ahead. The days that followed the confrontation were suffocating, not because of what my son did directly, but because of the world around me. Every step I took outside, the house seemed to invite judgment. Neighbors whispered as I passed. Relatives exchanged glances that spoke louder than words. And friends, though polite, maintained a distance that stung like salt on a fresh wound. The moment my son had humiliated me at his wedding, it was as if a ripple had spread through the entire community, labeling me as unreasonable, stubborn, and unworthy of respect. I felt the weight of isolation pressing down on me. Even people I had trusted for years now seemed to question my decisions. "Have you signed the papers yet?" They would ask with an almost casual cruelty, as if the destruction of my dignity were merely a routine matter. I tried to answer politely, to explain that I was not going to surrender my home or my self-respect. But the words often fell on ears that refused to listen. Their glances were sharp, their whispers merciless, and I felt like a stranger in a world I had known all my life. One afternoon, my cousin arrived. Her steps hesitant, she had always been close to me, but now there was an air of judgment about her. "Mother," she said softly, "people are talking. The wedding, the incident, your son is very upset. Don't you think it's time to be reasonable?" I looked at her, astonished and hurt. "Reasonable?" I asked. "Reasonable is what I have been all my life, sacrificing, loving, enduring. Reasonable is what a mother does without complaint. And this," I said, gesturing to the house, "the memories, the life I had built, this is not negotiable. I will not bend because the world or my own son expects me to." She hesitated, unsure how to respond. "But mother, he says you're making things difficult. People, they might see you as the villain." A bitter laugh escaped me. "Villain. I am the woman who raised him, fed him, clothed him, nurtured him, and loved him with every fiber of my being. And now, because he wants control, because he wants to erase my place in his life, I am a villain. The world can judge, whisper and point fingers all they like, but I know my truth, and that is enough." Days passed, and with each passing day, the whispers grew louder. Neighbors who once greeted me warmly now avoided eye contact. Even some of my closest relatives seemed to distance themselves, unsure where their loyalty should lie. The subtle glances, the small comments, the quiet insinuations, they all combined into a relentless wave of social pressure. At home, I found myself sinking into memories. I recalled the nights I had stayed awake, watching him sleep when he was sick, and wondering how I could stretch my earnings to pay for his school fees. I remembered the birthdays I had celebrated on shoestring budgets, the festivals when we ate simple meals while I made sure he had sweets, the little gifts I had saved months for, just to see a smile on his face. And now those very sacrifices were being ignored, twisted, or dismissed. The isolation and social scrutiny began to weigh heavily on me, yet they also reminded me of something vital. My worth was not determined by the opinions of others. Yes, they judged. Yes, they whispered. But their judgments could not erase my memories, my sacrifices, or the love I had given freely. One evening, I received an unexpected visitor, an old friend who had always supported me. Her eyes were filled with compassion, and she shook her head as she looked around the modest home. "They are relentless," she said softly. They don't see what you've done, what you've sacrificed. They only see what is easy to criticize. I nodded silently, tears threatening to spill. It is not just him, I admitted. It is the world, the whispers, the judging eyes, the relatives who choose to stay silent or take his side. It is relentless. She took my hand gently. Do not let it break you. You have survived so much already. This is another trial, and you will survive it too. Stand firm for yourself, for the truth of your life. You are stronger than they will ever realize. Her words were a balm to my soul, and that night I allowed myself to cry, not just for my humiliation, but for the strength I had discovered within me. I realized that the betrayal of my son, the whispers of relatives, and the judgment of society could not diminish what I carried in my heart. Decades of unconditional love, endless sacrifices, and an unbroken spirit. The following week, I received another message from my son, cold and calculated. Sign the papers or face consequences. The world is watching, and your stubbornness is harming everyone. I read the words, my fingers trembling, my chest tight, but instead of despair, a quiet fury rose within me. He could threat, manipulate, and intimidate, but he could not touch the foundation of my life, the life I had built, the love I had given, the courage I had forged through decades of hardship. I sat down with a pen and paper, not to sign anything, but to write down the memories, the milestones, the sacrifices, and the love that had defined my life. Every achievement of his, every birthday, every scraped knee and tender embrace. I documented them not as a record for him, but as a reminder for myself. The world may judge, society may whisper, and relatives may take sides, but my truth was mine, and mine alone. As days turned into weeks, the pressure did not ease. My son continued to try subtle manipulations, gifts sent with notes, occasional polite requests, hints of guilt, but I remained steadfast. I knew that giving in now would not only betray my own dignity, but it would set a precedent that my life, my home, and my heart were negotiable. And so I stood firm, even as the world seemed to conspire against me. I found solace in small routines, walking in the garden, tending to plants, reading letters from old friends, and reflecting on the life I had lived. The whispers could not reach me there. The judgments could not touch me there. In the quiet of my home, surrounded by memories of love and sacrifice, I reclaimed my strength. I realized that this trial, as painful as it was, had revealed something profound. The power to endure does not come from avoiding betrayal, humiliation, or loneliness. It comes from standing firm in the face of it, from refusing to surrender your dignity, and from recognizing that your worth is defined by your heart, not the opinions of others. In that quiet, I made a promise to myself. I would not let the betrayal of my son, the pressure of relatives, or the judgment of society define my life. I would live not in fear or despair, but with courage, dignity, and the quiet strength that had carried me through every trial before. And deep down, I knew that one day, my son would see the truth, not through words, but through the unwavering resilience of the mother he had tried to humiliate. The nights grew longer, and the quiet in my home became both a comfort and a torment. Each room seemed to hold echoes of the past, my son's laughter when he was small, his cries when he was hurt, the soft murmur of him whispering "Mama" as I tucked him in at night. These memories, once a source of joy, now carried a weight of sorrow, of betrayal, and of unspoken pain. I often found myself staring at his childhood photographs, tracing the contours of his tiny hands and smiling face with trembling fingers. I remembered the days when his world was so small that my presence alone was enough to calm him. I remembered the sacrifices I made silently, skipping meals, working extra hours, enduring sleepless nights, all to ensure that he never wanted for anything. Every threadbare sweater I patched, every crooked drawing I framed on the wall, every evening I spent consoling him after a scraped knee or a failed test. I had given all of myself, and yet here he was, demanding my home, questioning my love, and trying to erase the very foundation of our bond. The betrayal cut deep, sharper than any wound I had experienced before. For a moment, I allowed myself to cry, not just for the humiliation, But for the child I had loved so fiercely, now grown into someone I barely recognized. But tears alone would not save me. I drew a deep breath, feeling the familiar surge of resilience that had carried me through years of hardship. I remembered the early mornings, when I had walked miles under the scorching sun just to pay for his school fees. I remembered nights spent weaving clothes to sell in the market so that we could survive. I remembered the sleepless hours when I had nursed him through fever, whispering prayers into the darkness. Each of these memories reminded me that I was capable of enduring more than I had ever imagined. I began to write, not letters to him, not pleas for understanding, but a chronicle of our lives together. Every milestone, every small victory, every moment of tenderness and joy, I documented them all. This was not for anyone else. It was for me, a reminder of the strength, love, and dedication that had defined my existence. Each word I wrote strengthened my resolve, reminding me that my worth was not dependent on his recognition, nor could it be diminished by his cruelty. Flashbacks often overtook me, vivid and relentless. I saw him as a boy, shyly presenting me with a flower he had picked from the garden, his eyes wide with pride and anticipation of my smile. I remembered the time he stayed awake with me during a thunderstorm, trembling with fear, and how I held him close, whispering assurances until he finally drifted to sleep. I recalled the countless nights I had spent reading stories to him, inventing characters and adventures, watching his eyes light up with wonder. Each memory was a testament to the bond we had once shared, and each loss of that bond now ignited a fire within me, a determination to protect myself and my dignity, no matter the cost. Neighbors began to notice my resilience. Whispers continued, but some looked at me with a mix of awe and respect. They saw a woman who had been betrayed, who had been pressured, who had been humiliated, yet who stood firm, unbroken. Even those who had judged me in the past began to recognize that there was a strength within me that could not be ignored. I also began to prepare practically. I consulted with lawyers, reviewed documents, and made sure that my rights were protected. I was not seeking revenge. I was seeking justice and fairness. The house, the property, and the memories were mine, and I would defend them not with anger, but with unwavering resolve and careful planning. My son attempted to reach out, subtly at first, messages that seemed polite, visits that appeared tentative, and gifts left at my doorstep. All were attempts to manipulate, to soften me, to bend my will. But I recognized them for what they were. I was not naive. I had loved him too much to be fooled by surface gestures. Each attempt at manipulation was met with calm, firm refusal. I listened, I acknowledged, but I did not yield. One evening, as I sat in the quiet of the garden, I allowed myself to speak aloud the words that had long been confined to my heart. I have given everything for you. I whispered to the night sky. I have loved without condition, sacrificed without complaint, and endured without surrender. But I am not yours to control. I am not yours to diminish. I am my own, and I will not be broken. The wind rustled through the trees, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of peace. The struggle, the pain, and the betrayal were real, but so was my strength. I realized that my identity was not solely defined by my role as a mother, nor by the recognition or respect of my son. My worth was inherent, forged in the crucible of decades of hardship, love, and endurance. As the weeks turned into months, my resolve only strengthened. I began to reconnect with old friends, rediscovering the support and camaraderie that had been my lifeline in earlier years. I focused on small joys, the garden I tended, the books I had long neglected, the music that soothed my soul. Each day became a testament to my resilience, a demonstration that life, even after betrayal, could hold moments of beauty and peace. Occasionally, my son's messages would arrive, tinged with guilt or veiled threats, but they no longer shook me. I had learned that true strength is not the absence of fear or pain, but the ability to stand firm in their presence. I would not bend, not for anyone, not even for the child I had loved above all else. In the quiet moments, I reflected on what had been lost and what had been gained. Yes, the betrayal had left scars, Yes, the humiliation had been deep. But through it all, I had discovered a truth more profound than any social recognition or material possession: the strength to endure, the courage to resist, and the unwavering belief in one's own worth. And so I stood firm, a mother betrayed yet unbroken, a woman tested and proven resilient. The world may judge, society may whisper, and my son may demand, but I had discovered the power within myself, a power that no one could take away, a power that would guide me through every trial yet to come. Weeks passed, yet the tension between my son and me did not ease. Instead, it escalated in subtle, calculated ways. He no longer shouted or demanded in the open. His attempts at control became nuanced, insidious. Messages arrived at odd hours, carefully worded to create doubt, guilt, or even fear. Mother, I don't understand why you are being so difficult. Don't make me regret trying to include you. The phrasing was deliberate, the tone disguised as concern. He tried to wrap coercion in affection, manipulation in subtle guilt. He was no longer just demanding papers or property. He was trying to influence my emotions, to bend my will without direct confrontation. I knew these tactics too well, and I had to resist them, not just for the house or my dignity, but for my very sense of self. One afternoon, a friend came to visit. Seeing the tension in my face, she gently said, "He's trying to manipulate you. Isn't he? Those messages, the gifts, the polite words, they are traps. Don't let him get inside your mind." I nodded, tears threatening to spill. I see it, I feel it, but the hurt cuts deep. How can a mother not want to forgive, even when she knows she must stand firm? She held my hand, because standing firm doesn't mean you hate him. It means you love yourself enough to demand respect. Don't confuse firmness with cruelty. You are protecting yourself and teaching him a lesson he will never forget. That evening, I received a visit from him. Unannounced, he stepped into the room with a carefully rehearsed expression, concern, mixed with just a hint of frustration. "Mother," he began softly, "I don't want to fight with you. Please just consider what I'm asking. Think about the family, about appearances, about harmony. Why make things so difficult?" I looked at him, really looked at him, and for a moment, I saw not the child I had raised, but a man transformed by entitlement and arrogance. "Harmony?" I asked, my voice steady but strong. "You call this harmony, humiliating your mother, demanding her home, threatening her with legal action, and trying to manipulate her emotions." He shifted uneasily, realizing that my words struck deeper than he anticipated. "It's not like that. I don't understand why you are being so unreasonable. Don't you see how much this affects everyone?" I felt a surge of anger and sorrow, a mix so powerful it made me tremble. "I see perfectly. I see how much this affects you because you want control, not because you care. I see how much this affects others because society values compliance over justice. And I see how little you understand the meaning of respect, love, and gratitude." His lips pressed tightly together. "Mother, you are overreacting. I am only trying to do what is practical, what is best for you and for everyone. Don't let pride blind you to reason." I leaned forward, eyes blazing. "Pride? Do you think this is pride? This is survival. This is dignity. This is the result of a lifetime of sacrifice, patience, and love. And I will not allow you to trample it with manipulation and false concern." He attempted another tactic, guilt. "Mother, if you don't cooperate, I don't know how we can continue as a family. Think about your grandchildren. Think about your legacy. How will people remember us if you stand in the way?" I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. "Legacy? My legacy is not in property papers or in the opinions of neighbors. My legacy is in the love I gave, the sacrifices I made, and the resilience I demonstrated. And if my own son cannot recognize that, it is his loss, not mine." At that moment, I saw a flicker of frustration cross his face. He was unprepared for the strength I had discovered within myself. He realized that no matter what subtle pressure or emotional ploys he employed, I would not yield. "Mother," he said, his voice now a mix of exasperation and desperation, I just don't understand why you refuse. Everything I do is for you. I'm trying to help, and you make it so hard." I stood up, tall and unyielding. You call it help, I call it betrayal. You speak of concern, but your actions are rooted in entitlement. You demand, manipulate, and try to intimidate the person who has given you everything. That is not help. That is cruelty disguised as affection. He took a step back, his composure faltering. I could see the realization dawning on him that I was no longer the submissive, compliant figure of his childhood. I was a woman forged in the fire of years of struggle, and nothing he did could bend me. Silence fell between us, heavy and tense. His wife watched quietly, eyes wide, understanding perhaps for the first time the depth of what they were up against. The folder of papers on the table seemed insignificant now, a symbol of their failing attempts at control. Finally, he turned and left, slamming the door behind him. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, followed by exhaustion, yet beneath the fatigue, there was triumph. I had faced the full weight of his emotional manipulation, his threats and his attempts to undermine me, and I had stood firm. That night, as I sat alone, I reflected on the lessons I had learned. True strength is not measured by the absence of fear or pain, but by the ability to stand firm in the face of them. My son may continue to test me, society may continue to whisper, and relatives may continue to judge. But I had discovered a power within myself that no one could take away. I was a mother betrayed, a woman challenged, but I was unbroken, and in that unwavering resolve, I found a quiet, profound satisfaction, a certainty that no matter what trials lay ahead, I would endure, I would survive, and I would remain true to myself. The day finally arrived when my son decided to escalate the matter legally. A lawyer's office, cold and impersonal, became the arena for a confrontation I had long dreaded, yet secretly anticipated. I dressed simply, as I always had, my sari neatly pressed, my hair tied back. There was no need for embellishment or pretense. My dignity and resolve were my armor. Walking into the office, I felt the sterile air of authority pressing down on me, the smell of leather chairs and polished tables amplifying the sense of formality. Across the room, my son stood with his lawyer, the folder of papers clutched tightly in his hand. His expression was a mix of anger and frustration, while his lawyer carried an air of practiced professionalism, as if this were just another routine case. "Mother," my son began sharply, his voice carrying the authority he thought his position afforded him. "We are here to resolve this. I am giving you one last chance to sign the papers willingly. Do not complicate matters further." I looked at him, steady and unflinching. "Complicate matters," I repeated. "Do you think standing firm is complication? Do you not see that your insistence, your threats, and your attempts to manipulate me have already complicated everything?" His lawyer cleared his throat, adjusting his spectacles. "Ma'am, this is a legal matter. The documents are ready, and it is in everyone's best interest to proceed smoothly." I met his gaze directly. "Best interest? Whose best interest? Yours, yours alone. Perhaps you speak of law and procedure, but what about morality, respect, and human decency? Should these not have a place in your concept of best interest?" My son's face darkened, and he stepped closer. "Mother, do not lecture me. This is not about morality. This is about practicality. Sign the papers, and we can move on." I took a deep breath, letting the memories of years of struggle and sacrifice surge through me. "Practicality?" I asked, my voice ringing with intensity. "You speak of practicality while throwing me out of your wedding, humiliating me in front of everyone, and demanding my home as if it were a trivial matter. You speak of practicality while disregarding the love, sacrifice, and care that brought you to this moment. That is not practicality, that is cruelty." The lawyer shifted uncomfortably, sensing the growing tension. "Ma'am, please understand, this is a legal proceeding. Emotions, while understandable, cannot dictate outcomes." I leaned forward, my voice unwavering. "Emotions are what make us human. Do you think the law exists in isolation from justice, compassion, and fairness? My son may have the documents, the legal standing, but I have something far stronger: truth, memory, and dignity, and I will not surrender them to threats or coercion." My son's jaw tightened. "You are being obstinate." You risk losing not only the property, but also your relationship with me entirely. Is that what you want? I shook my head slowly. No, I want nothing more than mutual respect and understanding. But I will not exchange my dignity for compliance. I will not let fear, manipulation, or entitlement dictate my actions. You may threaten, demand, and even try to isolate me, but I will stand firm. I have survived far worse than this, and I will not break now. The lawyer spoke again, his voice attempting to mediate. Perhaps we can find a compromise, some arrangement that satisfies both parties. I looked at him, then at my son, and spoke with quiet conviction. There is no compromise when it comes to betrayal and disrespect. My home, my memories, my life, these are not negotiable. If compromise means sacrificing these, then I choose no compromise. I choose myself, my dignity, and the truth of my life. The room fell silent, the weight of my words hanging heavily. My son's frustration was palpable, but I could also see a flicker of realization, a dawning awareness that the mother he had tried to undermine could not be bent. He had underestimated the depth of resilience forged through decades of sacrifice and struggle. Finally, my son turned to leave, his lawyer in tow. The folder of documents remained untouched on the table, a silent testament to the futility of coercion when faced with unwavering conviction. The office, once a stage for confrontation, had become a quiet battlefield where victory was measured not by possession, but by the preservation of integrity. Walking out of the office, I felt a surge of relief and strength. I had faced the challenge, confronted the threat, and remained unbroken. The legal system, the documents, the pressures, all of these were transient. My resilience, my dignity, and the love I had carried for decades were permanent. That evening, I sat by the window, reflecting on the confrontation. I thought of the boy I had raised, the sacrifices I had made, and the unwavering commitment I had shown throughout my life. I realized that strength is not demonstrated by avoidance or submission, but by standing firm, by refusing to allow others to dictate the terms of your existence, even when they are those you love most. I also recognized that this confrontation, though painful, had a deeper purpose. It was a moment of truth, a test of character, and a revelation that my son's actions, however misguided, could not define my worth. I had survived betrayal, humiliation, and pressure, and I had emerged with my dignity intact. In that quiet reflection, I found not only relief but also clarity. The battle was far from over. Emotional, legal, and social challenges would continue, but I now understood my own strength more fully than ever. I was a mother who had loved without compromise, sacrificed without hesitation, and endured without surrender. And in that realization, I discovered a profound truth. No one, not even a son, could strip away the essence of who I am. The days following the confrontation at the lawyer's office were strangely quiet, yet the silence was far from peaceful. My son had retreated, temporarily thwarted in his attempt to coerce me legally, but the tension remained thick, like an invisible fog that hung over every corner of my home. The community's whispers continued, though more subdued, as if even they had realized that my resolve could not be bent. Yet inside, a storm of emotions raged: hurt, betrayal, lingering anger, and a complex mixture of love and disappointment. Alone in the quiet of my home, I began to confront the reality of my isolation. For decades, my life had revolved around raising my son, managing the home, and nurturing relationships. Suddenly, without warning, the world I had built felt both familiar and alien. There were no cheerful interruptions, no urgent calls for help or attention, no laughter echoing through the walls, only silence, and in that silence, my mind and heart had space to unravel, examine, and understand. I walked slowly through the house, my fingers brushing the walls, the furniture, the photographs of countless memories. Each item seemed to carry a weight of its own, whispering fragments of the past, the nights I stayed awake with him when he was sick, the small presents I had saved months for, the festivals we celebrated on tiny budgets, yet with immense joy. And I realized something profound. Even though betrayal had occurred, even though humiliation had been inflicted, these memories, these fragments of love and sacrifice, were untouchable. They belonged to me and me alone. I began to write extensively, not just a journal, but a detailed chronicle of my life and our shared history. Every memory was recorded with care. His first steps, the school plays, the birthdays, the scraped knees, the whispered apologies, and the small victories that had once filled our modest home with joy. Writing became a strategy, not just to preserve my sanity, but to assert, in black and white, the undeniable truth of my life. As I wrote, I reflected deeply on the nature of resilience. I realized that true strength is cultivated not in moments of comfort, but in the crucible of adversity. The betrayal of my son, the legal threats, the social whispers, all these trials were forging within me a deeper, more enduring strength. A strength that would not only allow me to withstand future pressures, but also provide clarity and wisdom to navigate them. Isolation, I discovered, was a teacher. It forced me to face the truth of who I was, what I had endured, and what I could endure. It allowed me to separate my own identity from the expectations and judgments of others, even those closest to me. In this space, I began to understand that my value was intrinsic, independent of approval, recognition, or compliance from anyone, even my own child. I also started to meditate on the emotional strategies my son had employed, the subtle manipulations, the threats cloaked as concern, the attempts at guilt. I analyzed each tactic, each word, and learned to see through the layers of coercion. This analysis became a form of empowerment. By understanding the mechanisms of his influence, I could maintain emotional clarity and avoid being swayed by false gestures or pressure. During these reflective hours, I often revisited the earliest memories of raising him. I remembered the days when life was hardest, when I had gone without meals so he could eat, when I had worked tirelessly to provide books, clothes, and education. Each sacrifice, though challenging at the time, had instilled a quiet confidence in me, a knowledge that I could endure, adapt, and overcome anything life presented. One evening, as the sun set and bathed the room in warm golden light, I allowed myself a moment of quiet triumph. Though I was isolated, though the world and my son had tested me relentlessly, I had not faltered. I was still standing, and in that standing, I had discovered a strength more profound than any document, any legal proceeding, any external validation could provide. I began to strategize emotionally, not out of anger, but out of self-preservation and clarity. I realized that the battle with my son was not just about the house or legal ownership. It was about respect, recognition, and the assertion of dignity. Every action I took would now be deliberate, measured, and rooted in principle. I would respond but not react. I would assert but not submit to emotional coercion. I would engage, but always from a position of calm authority, not desperation or fear. As the days turned into weeks, I noticed subtle changes within myself. My sense of isolation transformed into solitude, a space where I could cultivate wisdom, patience, and emotional resilience. I began to see my life not merely as a series of challenges, but as a testament to endurance, love, and moral strength. The betrayal, though painful, became a lens through which I could understand both my son and myself more clearly. Friends and a few supportive relatives began to notice this transformation. They saw a woman who had faced the deepest betrayal and yet emerged not bitter or broken, but composed, resolute, and dignified. Their respect, though silent, was reassuring. It was a reminder that resilience is not just an internal strength, it also radiates outward, influencing how others perceive and engage with us. In my reflections, I also confronted the love I still held for my son. This love, complex and painful, was not blind or unconditional in the naive sense. It was tempered with awareness. I realized that love does not require submission or compromise of self-respect. Loving him did not mean surrendering my dignity. It meant maintaining clarity, standing firm, and allowing consequences to unfold naturally while preserving my own integrity. By the end of this period of introspection, I had reached a profound understanding. External validation is fleeting, Coercion is temporary, and betrayal, while painful, cannot define the essence of a person who knows their worth. My son's attempts at manipulation and control were challenges, but they were not determinants of my identity or value. I had survived far more, endured far longer, and emerged stronger each time. In the quiet of my home, surrounded by memories, the soft light of the evening, and the unwavering resolve within me, I discovered a peace that was both empowering and liberating. I realized that while I could not control my son's actions, I could control my responses, my emotions, and my choices. And in that control lay true power, the power to stand unbroken, to live authentically, and to face any future challenge with courage and dignity. You are making this so difficult. He spat, his voice trembling. I have been patient, kind, and generous. And still you refuse. Do you know what you are risking? Yes, I said firmly, my voice unwavering. I know exactly what I am risking, but I am willing to risk everything rather than surrender my dignity, my memories, and the life I have built. You may have the law, but I have truth. You may have threats, but I have resilience. You may have coercion, but I have integrity. And that cannot be taken by force or fear. For a long moment, silence reigned. My son's breathing was heavy, his jaw tight, and his eyes darted around, seeking some leverage, some weakness. Any crack in the armor I had forged over weeks and months of isolation and reflection. But there was none. I had faced his ultimatums, analyzed his manipulations, and strengthened my resolve until it was unassailable. Finally, with a heavy sigh, he turned and left, the folder of papers untouched. The lawyer followed silently, understanding that no argument, no threat, and no manipulation could sway the mother who had endured and emerged stronger than ever. The room, once a place of confrontation, now felt like a quiet monument to resilience, dignity, and moral strength. Alone in the office, I allowed myself to exhale, a mixture of relief, exhaustion, and quiet triumph washing over me. The battle was far from over, emotional. Social and perhaps legal challenges would continue, but I had proven to myself, and perhaps to him, that true strength lies not in compliance, but in unwavering conviction. Walking home that evening, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. The sacrifices, the sleepless nights, the silent tears, the endurance of humiliation, and the constant reaffirmation of my own worth. Every trial, every betrayal, every moment of isolation had forged the unbreakable core within me, a strength that no threat could dismantle, no ultimatum could shake, and no social pressure could undermine. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the quiet streets, I felt a profound sense of peace. My son's threats, the whispers of neighbors, and the judgment of relatives could not touch the essence of who I am. I had survived betrayal, stood firm against manipulation, and emerged with my dignity and moral integrity intact. And in that realization, I found not only strength, but clarity that no one, not even a son, could dictate the terms of a life lived with love, sacrifice, and unwavering resolve. I was a mother betrayed, a woman challenged, yet unbroken. And in that unbrokenness lay a truth more enduring than any property, any document, or any fleeting opinion, the truth of my own worth, my own strength, and my own unassailable dignity. The weeks following my son's final ultimatum were quiet, but they were far from easy. Though the confrontation had ended without my signing any papers, the tension lingered like a heavy shadow. I moved through each day with careful deliberation, tending to my routines, reflecting on my choices, and nurturing the quiet strength I had cultivated during months of isolation and introspection. One morning, a letter arrived from my son's lawyer. I opened it with cautious curiosity. It was concise, formal, and to the point. After careful consideration, we acknowledge your decision to retain ownership of the property. No further legal action will be pursued at this time. We recommend open communication to resolve any remaining family matters. Relief washed over me, but it was tempered by contemplation. This was not just a legal victory, it was a recognition, albeit indirect, of the truth I had stood for. For years, I had lived in service of my son, sacrificing comfort, time, and personal desires. Now, through unwavering resolve, I had asserted not only my rights, but also my dignity. That afternoon, my son appeared at the door. Hesitant, his expression guarded. I could see the tension in his posture, the uncertainty in his eyes. "Mother," he began quietly. I realize now that I may have been wrong. I didn't understand the depth of what I was asking of you. I thought I was helping, but I see now that I was only hurting." I studied him for a long moment, my heart a complex mixture of lingering hurt, guarded hope, and cautious compassion. "It is true that you were misguided," I said softly, "but understanding comes slowly, and actions speak louder than words. The real test is not in apologies, but in how one changes and respects the boundaries of others." He swallowed hard, his eyes glistening with emotion he tried to mask. I want to make amends, Mother. Not for the property, not for appearances, but because I have realized the pain I caused you. I want to understand, to rebuild what I broke." I felt a flicker of warmth in my heart. It was not forgiveness yet, not fully, but it was a recognition that growth, even after betrayal, is possible. "Then start by understanding," I replied. "Understand that respect and love cannot be demanded. They must be nurtured, and that integrity, dignity, and moral courage are far stronger than any document or property." Over the next days, small but meaningful changes occurred. He visited more respectfully, his tone softer, his gestures less entitled. He asked for advice, listened without interruption, and slowly, through consistent actions, demonstrated a willingness to learn humility and respect. Each interaction reminded me of the boy he once was, the child I had nurtured, and the potential for the man he could still become. I, too, allowed myself a gentle transformation. Years of hurt and betrayal had not hardened my heart completely. They had, instead, strengthened my capacity for wisdom, discernment, and measured compassion. I realized that triumph is not in retaliation, but in standing firm with dignity, in demonstrating resilience, and in teaching through example rather than force. Neighbors and relatives began to notice a subtle shift as well. Whispers of judgment faded into murmurs of admiration. People observed not only the legal victory, but the grace, patience, and moral strength with which it had been achieved. I became quietly a symbol of endurance, wisdom, and the power of unyielding dignity. One evening, as I sat by the garden, my son approached with an old photograph in hand, a picture of him as a young boy, smiling shyly while holding a flower he had picked for me. "Mother," he said, his voice unsteady, "I forgot how much you gave, how much you endured, how much love you carried silently for me. I am sorry." I took the photograph, feeling the weight of years and the depth of emotion it represented. Tears welled up, but this time they were not of despair. They were tears of validation, of triumph, of recognition that my years of endurance, sacrifice, and steadfastness had not been in vain. "You have much to learn," I said gently, "and I will guide you, as I always have. But remember this: integrity, dignity, and respect are earned, not demanded. True love does not coerce. It nurtures, and even when betrayal occurs, strength comes from standing firm, not from yielding to pressure." He nodded, silent, absorbing every word. And in that moment, I realized that the journey, painful as it had been, was not only about reclaiming property or asserting legal rights. It was about teaching, about modeling resilience, and about the enduring bond between mother and child, forged through trials and strengthened by unwavering moral courage. In the weeks that followed, our interactions improved steadily. While the wounds of the past were not erased overnight, the recognition of mutual respect and the rebuilding of trust slowly took root. I felt a profound sense of closure, not because the past was forgotten, but because it had been faced honestly, courageously, and with dignity intact. I also began to mentor younger relatives and friends who faced their own struggles. They came to me seeking guidance, emotional support, and practical wisdom. I shared not just stories of hardship, but the lessons of endurance, self-respect, and moral courage. Each conversation reinforced in me the understanding that true triumph is measured not by possessions or victories over others, but by the strength of character, the capacity for love tempered with wisdom, and the ability to remain unbroken in the face of adversity. Months later, my son sat beside me in the garden, quietly reflecting. "Mother," he said softly, "I understand now. I see the depth of what you have endured, the strength you carry, and the integrity that cannot be taken. I hope to live up to even a fraction of that." I smiled, feeling a sense of peace and fulfillment I had not experienced in years. Then begin by acting with respect, integrity, and humility. Live in a way that honors not only yourself, but also those who have sacrificed for you. That is the true measure of growth, and the true path to reconciliation. As the sun set, casting golden light across the garden, I felt the finality of a chapter concluded, not without pain, but with triumph. I had faced betrayal, humiliation, manipulation, and pressure from the one I loved most. I had stood firm, protected my dignity, and emerged unbroken. And in that unwavering resolve, I discovered not only personal victory, but the profound truth that strength, love, and integrity, when wielded with wisdom and courage, are unstoppable forces, forces that endure beyond conflict, beyond fear, and beyond betrayal.